13.14c has been out on the live servers for a couple of days now, and as per usual, if you are new to the channel, we are doing what's called a meta-analysis. Not necessarily a comp list, but more of a meta-analysis. There is a difference between the two. I'm not going to tell you if this is S, A, B, whatever, but if we're talking about it, it's probably within A to S tier. But we're not just like ranking comps, we're also talking about legends, and we're talking about, you know, itemizations, things to have. No, we're not just, you know, again, it's not just comps. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things, what you can expect out of the meta, what you should lean into, what you should stray away from, strong units, weak units, niche lines, good lines, bad lines, common lines, etc. You get the idea. Dude, I should be a fucking rapper. That was lit. But anyways, before we start, I want to talk about this real quick. Listen, I'm really close actually to quitting my full-time job. I actually just recently went from full-time to part-time, and I'm trying to go from part-time to no time at that place because I fucking hate that place. I'm not going to talk about what it is. We'll talk about it once I quit. But starting from today until the Vegas land event. Jesus. I got the L's and the V's mixed up. But until that time, which is December, I believe it's December 10th, we will be doing daily videos every single day onto YouTube and 5 streams a week, Sunday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern. So please like the video, subscribe. You know the fucking drill. Follow me on Twitter, whatever. Like, you get the idea. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. We're just pumping out a shitload of content, and hopefully within that time frame, we'll be able to sort of make that final push into full-time content creation, which would be super lit because I've been doing this for a little too long now, and I'm still working at a shitty job. Anyways, let's talk about the meta-analysis. So let's talk about this real quick. Before we do, sorry, I gotta talk about this real quick. Yes, Augment data has been unfortunately removed from the patch. I don't like this personally very much. I don't think it changes anything. And if anything, I actually think this will accentuate the echo chamber that TFT already is. For those of you who don't know, TFT community in general sort of is like, hey, this one player said this really, really good thing about this really, really cool item or augment or champion. Now, everybody starts spamming it because they think it's OP, and then TFT becomes this echo chamber and it becomes a bit of a problem. I think the idea was that with augment data being removed, the TFT dev team wanted to see more people just try new things, talking with each other, trying to promote discussion and, you know, yada, 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 and all that jazz. Trying to avoid the echo chamber, but I think if anything, this makes it worse because now once one good player rather, says this thing is super OP or super strong, now everybody's running it. We're seeing it right now with Aphelios, where everybody's running Aphelios, and, you know, maybe a little bit of Zeri here and there because of clear. We'll talk about what I mean by that a little more later down the video, but you get the idea. I think, if anything, this makes the echo chamber a little worse, so that's a bit of a problem. But I will say, though, if you are super into stats, for whatever reason, Tactics.tools, they still have these tiers for stats. I don't know why. This is basically augment stat data, but worse. My assumption is that they take the augment placement data, they can't present it to you, but they have the information, and what they'll do is that I would assume they take the average from 213244 for a certain augment, average it out, and if it's above some arbitrary number, it's an S tier. That's my guess as to how they're doing this. I would take this with a grain of salt. There's nothing in here that's like super like, ooh, I didn't know that. You know, like, oh, cut above is S tier. Total domination is S tier. Streamer's legacy is S tier. Who knew? You know, like, this is, nothing in here is that surprising. I think suppressing fire being S tier is a little surprising. That's like the only thing. But besides that, like, nothing in here like blows my mind. But anyways, with that being said, though, I do want to talk a little bit about legends as well. This is kind of important because right now, legends are the most diverse they've been throughout the entirety of the set, which is kind of interesting. I never thought we'd hit this point, but there's actually like a couple of play styles that you can lean into, and depending on which legend you take, you can actually play however you'd like. We'll talk about the main ones right now. I'm not gonna go over every single one, but the ones to really take note, first of all, A-Soul, we're going in alphabetical order. This is no in particular order. A-Soul is just all right. He's not amazing, but if you want to take A-Soul and you want to gamble for that prismatic 2-1 opener with level up, go ahead, and you can do what's called Dragon King. Basically, you fast 9, try to stabilize your board a little bit on 8, and then you just go level 9, and you just play Ahri, Bel'Veth, and yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to talk about that comp today. It's just a Bill Gates board. It's just you fill your board with a bunch of legendaries. It's very difficult to pull off, though. If you're smurfing for whatever reason, you can pull it off, but like why would you do that though? Like, smurfing's really not fun, so I don't really see the point in it. But I mean, yeah, like if you're like way above your average elo or where you're supposed to be at, you could maybe actually try running Dragon Soul, or Dragon King rather. I don't think it's that great, but it's definitely an option if you want to try to play like that. Very first or eighth, but I can't take it. I can't play it. I tilt too fast. This would be bad for me, so I don't play it. Bard, we should briefly talk about. Bard was really strong for like the first day of the patch. Reason being that Caretaker's favor, Caretaker's ally See, this was updated within 13A, but wasn't updated within the B patch. So this is, it actually gives you tier 2 champion instead of tier 3. And that change alone basically makes Bard kind of mid. There's no real good 2-cost rerolls except for Talia set. So it's not that great. Nothing that you'd really want. Also, you really do try end 3-starring your 3-cost, at least before, by leveling to 8, and you can't really do that anymore, so it's not very good. Caretaker's Favor is alright. Caretaker's Chosen is actually alright. These 2 augments are actually fine to take at 2-1. I actually think they're totally okay. But the rest of his augments, especially seeing double, this augment is terrible. You just never take this augment. It's too much of a gamble. It's like item grab bag, but worse. It's really bad. Caitlyn, there's been a bit of discussion about Caitlyn recently with the Caitlyn tech. For those of you who don't know, this guy named Joe Bookmark, who is like this challenger player. He is currently ranked 7 on the ladder, but he is sort of trying to promote Stars Are Born. The reason being is that, well, first off, the recent change to starter kit makes Caitlyn kind of good, because you end up actually getting your 2-star 4-cost basically for free. So not even basically, it is for free. So you actually get your 2-star 4-cost for free no matter what. So if you high roll something like Aphelios, something like Urgot, your game's basically set. If you low roll something like an Azir, something like not J4, I wouldn't really say is a low roll, but it's definitely on the worst end. That can be pretty terrible. So, but starter kit, I mean, it's still a very good augment. If you have nothing better to take at 2-1, you can definitely take it. Stars Are Born, the idea being is that you can just strong board super strong early, and then you can just fast date, and then just, you know, reset your tempo there, and then you just go fast 9 afterwards. It's definitely possible, especially with this gain 6 gold change that they added. Definitely something to look into. I personally have not played it. I do like playing strongboard early, but I'm a little bit of a wuss. I don't like playing Caitlyn. It gives me a little less options in terms of flex. Plus, for me, in general, when I see someone take Stars Are Born, if somebody else just happens to high roll a 2-star 2-cost and a 2-star 1-cost, which it's not out of this world, you know, like that definitely does happen. You're kind of just down at Augment. So I'm not the biggest fan of it, but Joe Bookmark, again, he's ranked 7 NA, so like, I mean, whatever, bro. Like, it is what it is. Moving down a little bit, Ezreal is kind of okay right now. If you want to learn more about how to play Ezreal, you can go to... What the fuck? You can go to Spicy Appy's stream. Spicy Appy is the top legend... Not top legend, sorry, top challenger player as well, who he took Ezreal during the Failure Cup. I don't know if he still runs it, but if he does, you can talk to him about it because he knows this line way better than I do. All that I understand is that Berry Treasure is still decent right now, and Tiny Grab Bag is okay, and Well-Earned Comforts is not that good, but the Prismatic is actually alright. So take it if you want to take it. I think Ezreal is okay. Not the best. You have better options in my opinion. Lee Sin's not that great right now. Master Yi, there is a bit of a discussion going on with some Master Yi tech. We'll discuss it a bit more later, so we'll put this on the back burner for now. Orin right now is sort of the default for everybody. The reason being is that Portable Forge, nobody ever hates taking Portable Forge. You always like Portable Forge. The only Forge item that's kind of mid is Mana Zane, and even then, you can still play it on like a Sorc comp or even an Invoker comp. So it's really, like, there's no bad Ornn item per se. Like, you can high roll some stuff like Death's Defiance into like Darius reroll or whatever, or maybe Death's Defiance into Urgot, or maybe like a Trickster's Mirror into like double Akshan, double Callista, stuff like that. A lot of really cool lines that you can play with this. Portable Forge is just fun. It's just one of the most popular augments in the game in general. It has been for a long time. Can't go wrong with it. Lathan Forge is also one of the better silver augments that you can get. You basically get Portable Forge anyways, but you just get it like 8 player combats later, which is not even that bad. You're playing down a silver augment for like first half of the game, but it's really not that bad. Living Forge, this is only when you really do low roll. And even the Living Forge is okay, and it actually ends up being better super late game, so it's not even the worst thing to take. But this is definitely Ornn's worst augment. But Small Forge, Medium Forge, Large Forge, these all feel fine to take. You're never unhappy taking these. You're just kind of like, eh. And same with Jobs Done. You're just kind of like, eh. Like, it's fine, I guess. But it's never that bad. Masterful Job, I actually think is kind of good. You just get an Ornn item plus a completed item, so it's like not the worst thing in the world for Prismatic. You can definitely get much worse things than this. So definitely Ornn is sort of the default for everybody right now. Pango used to be okay because you could hard force Kale. That's not a thing anymore. Kale is really shit. Poro is like, if you just really just don't give a shit about Legends and you want to just play as flexibly as possible, you can. I will say though, as somebody who really likes Poro and has liked Poro for a long time, the current general augments that are given to you, as in the non-legend augments, you can definitely low roll all 6, and that feels really, really bad. If they buff the generic augments a bit more, then Poro will become a lot better, and in my opinion, Poro should always be the S tier choice, but it just isn't at the moment, which kind of sucks, but that's just how it is. At the current patch, I don't think Poro is the best right now. I do think Ornn is sort of the safest pick to go with, if you will. We're not even going to talk about Tomcast, Twisted Fate. These are just kind of mid. Twisted Fate you can maybe take only because Garen Reroll has slowly resurfaced back into the meta. I don't know for certain if Pandora's items is why it's coming back into the meta for, like, specifically. I think people are just flexing into Garen and they just happen to find it. I don't think you need Pandora's for Garen. So Twisted Fate is kind of just not a thing. We can talk a little bit about this later on, though. There is a comp that might want Twisted Fate. We'll talk about it in a bit at the very end. Earths as well. It's just if you want to have fun. This is just a for fun choice. Don't take this one. Veigar, there is some technology going on with Veigar as well. We'll discuss that a bit later. And Vladimir, it's kind of mid. But anyways, there you go for the Legends system. We're getting a lot more diversity, which is great. So maybe in the future, for more meta-analysis in the future, I would hope that we get to just spend like a whole day just talking about like Legends and stuff. That'd be really sick. But anyways, let's talk a bit more about the game plan as to, like, how to play into the game in general. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow. I'm not going to talk about this today. I know there's a bunch of comps I need to cover. So we're not going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. But currently, my favorite way to play is it's an angle reroll and then you tempo into flex. For those of you who are like, honestly, like probably plat and above, this probably makes a lot of sense. The idea being is that if you play a strong reroll comp early, you can either decide to then stick with that reroll comp or flex into a strong board later. The most obvious example is 6 Noxus. This is my favorite comp to be running right now. But 6 Noxus is just, it's strong board early, 3-2, this is your board. I mean, you drop Warwick, but this is your 3-2 board. And if you find a lot of Darius, it's great. Stick with it. If you don't, then fuck it. Pivot out. You can probably pivot into like some sort of like Urgot, Deadeye, whatever. You can even go try to fast 9, play something like this. This is just, again, the 5-cost soup we were talking about earlier. If you're trying to play Dragon King, this is your end game goal. You can see like the items from earlier got transferred over onto the Belveth here, but like this is just a thing that you could maybe do. Don't expect this to happen every time, but again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. This is something that I want to touch upon because if you're struggling to climb, this is sort of like a good approach into the meta that I think would help a lot of people out. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about the comps now. Let's talk first about Akshan Reroll. I have spoken about Akshan Reroll before, but that was before, first off, the Runans tech came about, but also that was before Akshan and Failure in general was getting a buff. So this comp was really, really bad back then. It was like okay in very niche scenarios, and now it's actually good. You don't need Failure Heart like I talked about earlier in a previous meta-analysis, if you remember me saying that, where I said, yeah, for Failure it was a must-have. Nowadays, you don't need that anymore. And actually, before I used to say Failure Heart, Failure Soul, you would never take it because it's, again, it's just sort of one of those things that you just happen to stumble upon, then maybe you can take on the emblem. But nowadays, Failure Heart, Failure Soul, sorry, very, very strong. Things that you can take, not a 2-1, I wouldn't hard force it, but you can definitely take Failure Heart, like, I think, like, almost every single time. Failure Soul, maybe not as often. The only reason why is because it gives you an Archangel Staff, which is really fucking awkward. I mean, Lissandra's kind of the only holder, but even then, it's not that great. Also, before, in the previous meta-analysis, I did say you had to go 8 and then roll for these units. It used to be a very high roll board. Nowadays, you just roll at 7, you just hit Akshan 3, Lissandra 3, and the comp, like, completes itself, and it's fine. If you've been keeping up to date with TFT, you would know that Akshan's BIS used to be Runan's Guardbreaker, but they did a couple changes this patch where I think it procs his the Runans every other bolt, but they compensated by increasing the AD on this champ. So now Runans isn't really a thing, but Runans is still one of his best items. Who would have thought? So, still want Runans on here. Guardbreaker +1. It's probably Deathblade, i.e. GS is fine as well. These are all things that you can be taking, and it's totally fine. You could also technically run Guinsoo's on this guy, because his ult does proc Guinsoo's, but it's sort of like the same thing with Runans. It procs every other time. I'm not the biggest fan of Guinsoo's Akshan. I don't think it's very good. But if you do end up with a Guinsoo's Akshan in the early game, you can actually pivot out into this Aphelios for Deadeye board instead. If you are like, hey, I'm not hitting Akshans or I'm contested, just go level 8, play Aphelios instead. This is really great. You might notice, by the way, Aphelios has Guinsoo GS. I know Guinsoo has been a bit of a topic of discussion recently. The reason being is that a lot of top players, Dish Soap, Robin Songs, and a couple other players, they will argue with you that Guinsoo's is really, really bad. I don't agree at all, to be completely honest. I actually think Guinsoo's is a very fine, it's not an amazing slam, but I don't think it's bad by any means. The reason being, by the way, the discussion really comes about because of this right here. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is the stats tab, specifically for items. And the item with the worst top 4 rate is actually Guinsoo. It's all the way at the bottom. Well, that's not actually entirely true. It's the egg, but if I just do craftable, here we go. It's Guinsoo's. at the bottom, 4.4, 51.3% win rate. And you're like, whoa, like this kind of sucks, dickhead. Like, what the fuck? This is bad. This is terrible. But I don't think this tells the whole story. And this is kind of the reason why they took away stats in general, because people can't really read stats very well, and like they were like, stats are making too much of a decision, and people aren't critically thinking about why data presents itself in the way that it does. Anyways, I could go on a whole rant about that, but you might also notice Guinsoo's at the bottom. Guess what's at the top? Fucking Locket. This item is dog shit, but somehow it has a very high top 4 rate. Reason being is that you're never building Locket, you just happen to stumble upon it, and if you happen to stumble upon it, you're probably in a pretty good position where you're like, hey, I got nothing better to take, might as well take Locket, and that's why the top 4 rate is so high. That's also why the play rate is so low. Also, Guinsoo's has one of the highest, if not the highest play rate. It's actually the highest. So for it to average around like a 50%, 51%, that's pretty much expected. That's just how the stats work. If somebody's going something 4 out of 8 times, chances are they're probably winning half the time, losing half the time. So that's just how it is. So I mean, I think Guinsoo's is fine. I don't think the stats tell the whole story. I'm sure that there's some other discussion as to like why people say Guinsoo's is bad, and that's fine. I'm totally down for discussion, and like please let me know if it's not just a stats thing. For me, it just seems that people are just looking at stats and they're just looking at this and going, oh, it's just not very good. But I don't know. If you ask me, I think Guinsoo's is fine. It just depends on the user, right? I think the best way to think about itemization in general is just go into the units tab over here over on tactics.tools, go into the units and just click on a unit, and then just go into item trios and then adjust it by their adjusted place rate, and you'll see which items do the best, right? In this case, with Aphelios, surprisingly enough, Guinsoo is fine. Again, take it with a grain of salt though. Is Guinsoo really his best itemization, or is there more to it? Chances are there's more to it, and we'll explain why Guinsoo could actually be so high up here. I do have a theory as to why this is the case, but we'll talk about that later. But actually, if you ask me, Aphelios BIS is probably here. It's Deathblade double Guinsoo's or double Guinsoo's IE. It's kind of always been this way, or double Guinsoo GS is fine as well. This has sort of always been Aphelios' BIS. It's always has been. I can't really explain why. It just, if you play it though, you'll feel it. Like you'll like, oh, Aphelios actually dishes out like a decent amount of damage. So it actually feels really good. Aphelios just loves attack speed, so this is just something that you can consider. Personally speaking, if I'm playing Aphelios or if I know I'm playing into it, I'll actually try to itemize Guinsoo whenever I can, because it dishes out a lot of damage. Like it does take time to ramp up, but they sort of cancel each other out because they both stack up attack speed. As you stack up more, it's exponentially quicker, you know? So that's probably the reason why. We'll talk about Guinsoo later, though. That's a really interesting itemization. But you'll also notice, again, double Guinsoo is actually being itemized a lot. Not just on Aphelios, actually on a bunch of other units. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Next, let's talk about Tristana Reroll a little bit. Tristana Reroll is sort of back in the meta a little bit. Reason being is that if you can find a really good opener in the early game, or you find unstable Yordle delivery, I wouldn't say hard force it with unstable Yordle. You do need some level of an opener, being something like Poppy 2, Maokai, Tristana 2, something like that. It's definitely a thing you can play. I will say though, in the stats, if you go into it, I don't have it open right now, oopsies. But if you go into Tristana, go into 3-star, go into Poppy, go into 3-star, you might notice, oh shit, that average is kind of shit. We're not done inputting data though, because when you play this line, you end up 3-starring all of these. 4.59, which is okay, it's a low top 4 rate, but that's because if you run 2-gunner, you are kind of fucked. But if you manage to go 4-gunner, which is really not that hard, you average a 3.9. So it's really not that difficult. 4-gunner is just, you just go Zeri Jinx, right? It's level 8, but you can actually drop Veigar at 7 and then just play this, and that's fine. Like, this is totally viable. You also can drop Kled as well. You play into the Heimerdinger as well for the 3 Yordles. This is fine as well. You actually, in this variation, I would actually argue you probably want to go triple self-repair in here. I think people have sort of like given up on triple self-repair. I actually think within the Tristana line, it's fine. You do need to find some level of anti-heal eventually along the way. Maybe Morello this, or maybe just one Mechano here, or I mean, it's triple self-repair or bust. You might actually want to triple Mechano instead. It depends on how things are going. You know, play it by ear. But definitely very viable to go triple self-repair here. Just add a little more frontline. Maokai 3 alone isn't that great. If you ever get to the point where you can play 5 Yordles, though, you get to play the Poppy 4, Tristana 4, it's basically a win out. Just to give you like an idea here, if you just go into 5 Yordles, into the Stats Explorer, it's a 3.8. It's a 3.8, which is kind of insane. It's still really good. Definitely can't sleep on it. It's solid. So definitely can play this if you have the opener for it. Don't sleep on Tristana Reroll. I think it's fine. But on the discussion of one cost, also I did talk about the build. I'm sorry. Last Whisper Gunblade on Tristana always. Primary tank is Maokai. If you feel like high rolling, you could itemize your Poppy instead and try to go for Poppy 4. But that's a difficult thing to achieve. But anyways, moving on. Talking on the discussion on one cost rerolls. Cho'Gath 3, Malzahar 3 is a topic of discussion. I know people think it's good. The idea being that you can 3-star Cho'Gath, 3-star Orianna, 3-star Malzahar, and then you play like the 6 Void line into like 4 Sorc somehow. I think at level 8 you just play this, right? That's probably the board. I don't like this line very much, and it's just because first off you're playing Void reroll, right? But like you're 3-starring this, 3-starring this, and what you'll soon find is that Malzahar 3, at least from my experience, this unit is strong until 3-5, and then it just sucks. So I think there needs to be a little more work done for Malzahar to be like actually viable. This line also, I wouldn't play it at all, would never hard force it. It would only be if I had a lot of Cho'Gaths, a lot of Malzahars, and I decided to not level on level 3 for whatever reason. I'd have to be sitting on like 5 or 6 Cho'Gaths and like a shitter Nico for me to even consider this line. The reason also being is that like, if I'm sitting on 3-star Cho'Gath but I'm far from the Malzahars, why would I play this board when there is actually just a better version of this board, which is just reroll Void at 7, where you just play this board instead, which is just significantly better. The idea being you 3-star Rek'Sai, 3-star Cho'Gath, or 3-star Cho'Gath is, you know, you're playing the other line and you find early Cho'Gath, whatever. But you actually 3-star Vel'Koz instead, and this is just way more consistent and way better. A while back, we actually did a VOD review on this channel about this Japanese player. His name is Didi. But Didi actually played reroll Void. It was a 6 Void version. And he actually played a version which was like this. You don't actually 3-star the Talia, and you don't have to 3-star the Kassadin, but he actually, the way that he played it was this, which is why it was 3-starred earlier. But he played this board, and he actually managed to top 4, and it actually looked kind of decently strong, albeit it wasn't a different patch, but this was before the Void buffs, so, you know, definitely something to consider. I think his board was actually this, specifically, but hey, still works. Theory still stands. Just to reiterate the point a bit further here, if we go into the stats here, I did have this open earlier, but because I had to refilm the video, for those of you who don't know, if you refresh tactics.tools on the Explorer page, it gets rid of all your inputs, so I have to do this all over again. But going back, Malzahar 3, Cho'Gath 3, oh, whoop-de-doo, it's a 5.02. And then if you go into 6 Void, it's a 4.6. It's getting a little better, and then you need Kai'Sa, but then you also actually need Kai'Sa 2-star. There we go, finally. Now we have some like decent stats to look at. Again, it's fine. It's not amazing. It's just a thing that you can play. Stable Evolution is an augment that you should definitely consider picking if you decide to go this line. I think Stable Evolution 2-1, and then if you also have like a bunch of Malzahars and a bunch of Cho'Gaths, then like it's like, okay, consider playing this line. But that is probably the only time I would ever like really play this line, if ever. Just to give you like a better idea as well as to like why I think like these stats are just significantly worse than the Rek'Sai ones. It's just because just straight up they are. So if you just go into here, Rek'Sai 3, Vel'Koz 3, we're already looking at an average of a 3, and this is without like everything else. Obviously you're playing into 6 Void here. But this is just significantly better in general. Like, this is just so much better. The reason why the average does go down a little bit with 6 Void, though, is because there is this multicaster version of Rek'Sai Reroll, where you don't play 6 Void, but you actually play, I believe it is 4 Bruiser. Yeah, so you play 4 Bruiser with Vel'Koz 3, and I believe it is Sona 3. You know what? Just because we're here, might as well just talk about the board real quick. Because this is a viable line that you can play with Rek'Sai Reroll. It's just a very niche line. This one, I don't see it played too often, but it's definitely something that you can play. But it's something along the lines of this, I believe. I believe it's actually Cho Goofy over Vi. There we go. For the 3 Void, and then you end up playing Freljord here, 3-star this. And then level 7, it's multicaster. It's probably Sona, but I don't actually... You know what? Let's check real quick. Why not? While we're here. 2.77. I mean, it's 13 games. It's really low. Maybe Talia. 2.71. It's a thing. Like, you can probably... I mean, to me, that just says no diff. So, just play whatever here. And this is like a board that you can play. If you happen to find a lot of Rek'Sais, a lot of Vel'Koz, instead of playing 6 Void, you can play this line instead. I will say, though, I don't even know if you need multicaster, to be completely honest. Let's actually exclude multicaster from the data, see what happens. But It's actually better. So yeah, maybe you play this at 8 instead, and then you probably at 7 you just play this. Looks fine to me. You just play Bing Bop. Actually, funny enough, did you know Vel'Koz likes Shojin better than Blue Buff? I did not know that. Supposedly that's the thing. And then with Rek'Sai, it's just double healing plus Titans. Something like that. It could be Hodge BT, but this is sort of the play. Yeah, but this is fine, I guess. You can also just itemize Lysandra as well. Vel'Koz 3 is sort of just extraneous. This is just if you happen to find it. You can actually just do this instead as well. Probably fine. You know what? We can actually check for that as well. The Explorer is just beautiful. It's just something that you can do every single time. Lysandra 2, 2.67. So yeah, if you miss on the Lysandras, you can play for the Vel'Koz instead. This board, if you ask me, is probably still very viable. I think people just aren't really flexible when they're playing this line. They kind of tunnel vision on the Rek'Sai and the Lysandra, and Lysandra is hard to hit because of Akshan Reroll players. So yeah, just something to consider. It's definitely fine. It's definitely something you can play into. But again, this one cost reroll version of it, I think it's the weakest version of Void reroll. I think you have a bunch of other options that are available to you, such as the Rek'Sai reroll line, such as the 6 Void with Vel'Koz 3, Khazad 3, Rek'Sai 3, as this is just a line you can play as well. Moving on, let's go talk about vertical challenges real quick. Sorry, that's my little chess. Right here, vertical challengers. I don't think enough people are really giving challengers enough credit. I actually think that challengers is totally fine in the current meta. The idea being is that you can actually, I don't know why Sion's in here, but the reason being is that you can actually just tempo pretty easily with 6 challengers early game. It's surprisingly strong, especially if you get the early items onto Kalista. If you don't find early Kalista items, I would not play this line though. Let me say that again. If you don't have like that Guinsoo's, that JG early game, like that at 2-1, if you don't have like a JG or Guinsoo's, I would not consider playing this line. But if you do, definitely consider it. Just to give you an idea here, if you go into 6 challengers, into Kalista, into 3 stars, boom, 3.4. Very high top 4 rate, actually. It's actually not a bad line. And then at level 8, you just tech into Senna here. You don't, I know I have the Challenger Crest on here. You don't actually need it. It's just, instead of this, it's this at 7. And then at level 8, you just play the Senna, and there you go. Again, really strong line that you can play. You reroll at 7, obviously, to hit the Kalista 3. You can also go for Warwick 3 as well. I've played this a couple of times. Warwick 3 feels kind of mid, though, in just my honest opinion. I don't think this is particularly strong by any means, but if you happen to find, like, a bunch of Warwicks, or if there's a Ravenous Hunter player in your lobby and you want to grief them, this is something that you can do. So definitely take that into consideration. It's definitely like a possible line to play. Moving on, Zeri is back in the meta, which is super dope. I missed Zeri. I'm gonna be honest. I like having the fact that we have Aphelios, but also Zeri as like 80 lines potentially open when you're playing flex. So really, really good stuff that Zeri is finally back in the meta. This is the most obvious line for Zeri, of course. This being the Piltover line. I need a little bit of coffee. I've been yapping. I know it's late, but like, damn, like coffee's just always good any time of the day. But Zeri 2, along with Piltover, Heimerdinger, very good stuff. 4 Zon, 4 Gunner. We all know this line. This is a very 2-1 Piltover opener type of line where, you know, you hit that Piltover early, you just fucking open for it for like 10 rounds, and then boom, T-Hex. Boom! T-Hex hits, and then this is fucking like 40, 50 stacks, 60 stacks, 70 stacks, and you're just fucking wiping the floor with everybody. I will say though, 2-1 Piltover is not an auto win. It's close, but it's not, and that's good. That's what it should be. But it's, don't expect to just hard win out. You do need to go 8 with this board. I know it says level 7 here, but this is also, we have a Sen and a Heimerdinger on this board. Like, this is very unrealistic. Usually what ends up happening is that you have 2 lines to play here. Usually, this is not Heimerdinger. This actually ends up being Vi in the early game, early to mid game, to be completely honest. But you also don't really end up playing this. You end up playing something like a Tristana. So the board's actually a lot weaker at 7. And there's also like multitudes of outs. For example, you should know when you're playing this line, Zeri 1 is sufficient. The idea being is that you cashed out a decent T-Hex. If you didn't, then you might need Zeri 2. But Zeri 1 is fine, and then you have a decent T-Hex. That'll carry you out to level 8, and then level 8, level up, get the 2-star Zeri, and then look for the other units. I will say as well, level 8, until you find that Heimerdinger and whatnot, Sejuani is kind of the way to go. There are multitudes of ways of playing this. You can also play with a Zon Crest or a Zon Heart. What ends up happening is that you actually tech down, you actually play into the Warwick instead at level 7, and this is just your level 7 board. Again, really strong board, especially 6 Zon. You want Robotic Arm or Virulent on Zeri. These are the 2 best chem mods on Zeri because they did bug fit Zeri so that, you know, Robotic Arm works on her. You want stuff like Unstable Chem Tank, Exoskeleton, Adaptive Implant is probably the best in my opinion for Urgot, but I mean, all of them are very great. The third one goes on who's ever tankier. Figure it out. But again, really strong stuff, really good stuff. But there is another way to play Zeri as well. It's not just Piltover. Oh, by the way, itemization real quick. Again, we have the Guinsoo here. Adjust the place. Guinsoo Last Whisper is her best itemization. Again, I think double Guinsoo is actually like, I've been talking about this for a while. I think double Guinsoo is actually kind of good. The reason why it's good on Zeri, and we can talk about this now. The reason why it's good on Zeri is because you get a lot of AD out of Gunners. This is actually sort of the reason why double Guinsoo's 0 was so good during the last patch. The reason being is that Strategist gave you a lot of AP. You're getting a lot of AP, a lot of base stats out of your synergies, and then you can just focus on the attack speed. You can focus on whatever else, maybe some sort of shred. That's why Guinsoo Shiv was BIS 0 in the last patch, and in this patch, Guinsoo Last Whisper is really good on Zeri because you don't actually really need AD items. You can just go this double Guinsoo shit, and it's totally fine. It's really, really strong. You just, you know, you just pop damage. You just, what is it, 4 gunner, right? So you get, what, 88 AD after they ramp up? Like, it's pretty fucking strong. So you really don't need those extra AD items. We can't talk about the other itemizations as well. Last Whisper is a must because there's no real good way of putting Shred into this board. But you also have other things too. GS, Last Whisper, this is sort of the most common one, I would say. But there's also Hodge is super, super good on her as well. Guard Breaker's okay. There's a lot of shielding in the current meta, so Guard Breaker is actually a terrific slam in most scenarios. Definitely don't sleep on Guard Breaker. It's fine. QSS is okay as well. The reason being is that there's a lot of CC, a lot of Eternal Winters because of a lot of portable Forge players. So definitely something to consider because you don't want Zeri to just cut her ultimate short, right? That's a problem. So QSS is really good on Zeri as well. Definitely something to consider. But like I said before, Shred has sort of become difficult to put into the gunner board, but you can actually play into this 3 failure line instead. This is where, if you remember earlier when we were talking about Legends, Master Yi sort of comes into play. This is because of this guy named Clear. He is a top challenger player on the NA ladder, consistently like very good at the game. He is sort of talking about this open fort Zeri technology. The idea being is that this is his Reddit guide. It's like with Comic Sans MS. This is memey as fuck. But this is like a very quick guide if you want to know how to play the comp. Really simple. This is the level 7 board. This is the level 8 board. And this is the level 9 board. I think I have his level 7 board open already, which is, I believe it's this one here. But, I mean, if you want to go check it out, I'll link it in the description below. But, basically, all he's saying is you open fort to 3-5, and then you hard send it for Zeri 2 or Urgot 2, and then you can econ back up. You take pumping up 3, pumping up 1, pumping up 2. They're all... Actually, I don't even know if you take pumping up 1. I don't know if he clarifies it. He says only gold and prismatic. So you open for 3-5, send it 3-2, hit Zeri 2, Urgot 2, and then you can just go level 8 and then yada yada yada. He talks about BIS in here, what he thinks is good. It's a very simple, very straightforward guide. I highly recommend looking into it if you just want to know how this works. I will say though, if you have 2 people running Master Yi in your lobby, probably don't play Zeri. They're both gonna open fort, both gonna die, and then you're top 6 secured. Good job. So yeah, keep that in mind. I will say though, his low chest is speaking thousands of words about this comp because like, I mean, he's placing really, really well. Zeri, you know. And all these are really high placements. He's going 2nd, going 4th. He went 6th, not even that bad. 2nd, 4th, 3rd, 1st. Like, he's doing really, really well overall. This is, you might think this is not Zeri. I think this is actually still Zeri. I think he just happened to find a better board. He had medium and shopping, so he just fast ate into like a legendary board. So I mean, I think that's fine. But yeah, nonetheless, really, really high average, doing really, really well with it. Definitely a comp you can consider playing. But yeah, this failure board, if you want to learn the mechanisms behind why this board is good, by the way, if you're playing failure, it's not Last Whisper, it's GS. You get enough shred from failure. But if you want to know why this board is so good, Duck actually did a whole video on why Failure Zeri is good. He goes a bit more into the mechanisms, which is kind of interesting if you want to go check it out. I should like the video. But he did a really fantastic job explaining why the comp is actually good. The comp is just Zeri Urgot with Failure. I have spoken about this in previous meta-analyses before. But I didn't go too far in depth with it. He definitely goes way more in depth in this like 4-minute section here. So definitely something to check out. Definitely something to consider. But yeah, moving on. Vertical Sorcerers. This is one of the comps I forgot to talk about in the first full take of this video, which is really unfortunate. I don't know how I forgot to talk about Vertical Sorcs. It's a very strong board. It's a very top 4 board in my personal opinion, but it's definitely a board that you can play. It's a lot harder to play though without the Sorc emblem. Reason being is that with the Sorc emblem you get multiple outs, but without it you only have 1 out. So let's talk about it. First off, without the Sorc emblem, you have to go level 8. It's very difficult to pull this board off without level 8. You need level 8 because you need to fit in 3 Demacia because Lux needs that Demacia item because without it, she is significantly worse as a unit in general. Your out with 6 Sorcs rather is Ahri 2, which is just a very difficult time to find. Ahri, if you don't know already, is one of the premier 5-cost champions at the moment. One of the strongest actually. I think there's a bit of an echo chamber going on around Ahri saying like she's like turbo broken or whatever. And they're not completely wrong. She's very, very strong. And actually, funny enough, without the Sorc emblem, if you go 9, if you manage to get that far, you can actually play a board like this. I believe it's something like this. And this is just fucking disgusting. It's so strong. But it's really hard to pull off. Usually level 8 boards this, and again, your out is Ahri 2. Ahri 1 is actually sufficient. This is fine. You should be able to go 9 with this. It's hard though. I will say it's hard. But if you have her itemized properly, definitely something you consider. But again, Ahri, very highly contested unit. So 6 Sorc, it's a little difficult. And again, the spat is nice. So let's talk about the spat though, now that we're on that topic. If you hit the spat though, this board is a lot easier to play. You don't even technically need the augment as long as you find a spat somewhere in a tier. Definitely just you can slam it and play this Sorc line instead. Because the reason why it's so much better is because you get to play this board on 7, not on 8. Because going level 8 is already expensive enough, and then you're just kind of stuck with this Ahri 1 praying you hit Ahri 2 situation, and it's not very fun. The thing is, though, is that if you actually manage to go Sorc Crest, you can actually reroll at 7. And you actually get to play for Vel'Koz 3, Taric 3, and these items actually end up going over here. Again, for whatever reason, Vel'Koz likes Shojin. I don't know why, but that's just how it is. And this board is very, very strong. You could go for Sona 3. I don't think Sona 3 is much of a unit right now, though. It's just not that great in my opinion, but nonetheless, really great board. Obviously, you're not playing Ahri here. You're playing something like the Orianna, I think, is probably the best one here. Until you find Ahri, but yeah. That is basically the board. I did say you had multiple outs. Vel'Koz 3 is one of those outs. If you do have the Sorc Crest, but you're like, hey, I'm just not finding a lot of Vel'Kozes / like I just didn't natural very many. I'm just lucky to even have the 1. Just push level 8. And if you go level 8, you can actually play into 8 Sorcs, which is a very real board and a very scary board to be playing into. And this shit is just fucking scary. 8 Sorc, obviously, you kind of do want the double crest though. Double crest, Sorc heart or whatever. You do really want that. And then you're playing around this Ahri out, but you're 8 Sorc, which is super strong. This board can probably win out a lot of lobbies. It's a very, very strong, very high cap board to be hitting. But if you find it, congratulations. You hit Ahri 2, you won the game. I'm not even kidding. I don't think I've seen a single board beat this board, except for like 3-star 4 cost. It's insane how strong 8 Sorcerers is at the moment. But again, 2 spats, it's very high chase trait, so obviously it's supposed to be super, super strong. And yeah, this is, again, very, very strong. I will say, though, if you do miss on 6 Sorc, you can actually tech down to 4 Sorc. And you can actually play this Karma 3 line. Now, this actually does require a Demacia crest, which is a really odd crest. It's a very niche crest that you don't see a lot of people taking. But this line, I don't think is talked about enough. I don't think I've actually seen it either. This is a bit more of a theory craft thing, but it was really good in the stats. This is, I was wondering about this line because I was like, what if you miss Sorc Crest, right? Like, how can you play around this line? And this actually came up, surprisingly enough. You basically reroll at 7 and you go for Taric 3, Karma 3. This is assuming, again, you're not, like, contested by Invokers. And this line actually has a much better win rate and top 4 rate than 6 Invokers Karma 3. For those of you wondering, like, why not just play 6 Invokers? That's why. I know this is Demacia Crest here. You don't actually need Demacia Crest. I know you said you need it. You don't actually need it. Reason being is that the reason why you don't actually need it is that you can just go 8. Problem solved. You can also do this. fine as well. And then your level 9 is a Rise, fine as well. That's okay, I guess. Like, you have a bunch of different ways to, like, play around this board. You don't actually need the Demacia Crest. It's just nice to have. Just know that if you do have it, then you can just reroll at 8. This just goes on whatever shitter, because you don't want the shitter to be getting the Demacia item, so it's probably going on Swain. But it's really, really strong. This is obviously not an Ahri. This is probably something... You don't even need Ionia, actually, before this. You just need a Sorcerer. So, it's probably something like this. Chilling, and then you find Ahri. Oh, whoop-de-doo, you already have 2 out of 3 Ionia. Boop, there you go, all set. So this board, again, really strong in the stats, not played enough. I think this is a really strong board that I think we'll probably see this sort of become more prevalent within the meta. It's like surprisingly strong, and I know a lot of people really want to be playing Karma 3. I will say this though, this board you do need Archangels on Karma, you do need Shojin. So the BIS is a little more narrow. You really want Archangels on this unit. But just to give you an idea here, again, Karma 3, 3 Demacia, 2.94. It's a really, really strong line that you can play. Just Karma 3 in general, just, again, for those of you who, like, kind of doubt me, 6 Invoker, averages a 3.2, but then you have 4 Sorcerer right underneath that, averages a 2.59. I'm just saying. It's definitely a line you can look into. There's also this, like, Failure line as well, which, I believe... It's just Karma 3 with like List 3 and like Sejuani, Ash, and like whatever. It's also like a viable line you can play. But yeah, don't sleep on this line. I think out of all the lines I'm talking about today, this is probably the most sleeper line. I think Reroll Karma is still in the game. You just haven't found it yet. It's not 6 Invoker, it's 4 Sorcerer, and you dual carry with Deluxe. A lot of AP, but so strong. And yeah, Shen 2 is just a good unit. Jarvan 2 is a good unit. The unit quality is just very high on this board in general. It's very nice. And you go 8 and you just play whatever. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. It's actually probably just Heimerdinger or Senna. It's one of the two. Both are really great. Anyways, moving on. Going on to the final boards, or final 2 boards, really. Actually, there's actually another sleeper comp that's even more sleeper than the Karma 3 board. And it's not this one. Well, it's coming up. But Zed 3 has sort of reared its ugly head back into the meta. The reason being is that there's this sort of theory going around with Veigar as your legend, and you can actually hard force Zed reroll. The idea being is that if you take Jewel Lotus, you don't actually have to itemize an IE on Zed. So you just take Jewel Lotus 2-1, you open Fort, and then on 3-2, you send it. Try to find the Zed 2, the Darius 2, the Kled 2, the Zed 2, the Jin 2, surprisingly. This is a bit of a surprise if you didn't know already. The original variation included Aurelia, but people have found that you actually preserve a decent amount more HP if you just play Jin 2 instead, and you just play from like an Ionia opener, because you have Set and Jin, if that looks any bit familiar to your early game openers. But very, very strong. You do position like this, by the way. You used to position like this, and then people found out that if you just go like this, and you just play one Cassante, this just gets thrown off the board, which is really fucking terrible. So you kind of want to position kind of like this. The reason why the positioning looks kind of so sketch is because the way that this works is that basically we look at a full board. Let's say, for example, the opponent, let's say they're playing something like Aphelios, right? So let's just get all these Aphelios units onto our board real quick, and I can demonstrate this for you. I probably should have set this up sooner, but I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but now we are. So this is close enough. I don't think I have everything, but it should be good enough. So let's say, for example, right, this is sort of how it looks. Bing, bop, boop, action. That's an important piece of the puzzle. And Ergot. Here we go. Right, so this is sort of like what it looks like, right? Obviously, you're not playing a level 6 board, and they're playing a level 8 board. That would be ridiculous. But, by the way, we should just talk about this real quick. As you level up, you actually drop out of Noxus and you just play more Slayers. Noxus really doesn't do much for you. It's really just like, it's just nice to have. But yeah, you basically sort of just position something along the lines of this, and you position like this. And let's talk about the positioning and why this is the case. Obviously, you drop the Jin for something like a Shen 2, and yeah, that's probably what it looks like, right? So let's say this is, for example, the fight that you're playing into, right? This is important to talk about, right? Because why do we position like this? Specifically, you want your Set in the corner and the Shen in the corner. And basically what ends up happening is that these get immediately targeted, right? Immediately targeted. So what ends up happening, Aphelios is gunning down the Zed like the degenerate that he is. If you know that meme, you are a real one. And then Zed falls into the backline here. But guess what happens? If Zed falls back into the backline, who does Aphelios target next? It is Shen. Good job. What ends up happening is that as Zen is getting gunned down, like the degenerate that he... Sorry, I should stop saying that. But as he starts getting gunned down, Shen walks up. And by the time this Zed falls into the backline, Shen is now getting targeted. So behind in this corner, you want your strongest tank. And actually, if you run into any Zed players, you would actually know which side they're trying to lean on in terms of which side their Zed is going to go on, because they're going to put their strongest tank in the corner on the same side as their assassin. So for example, let's say they focus on this side and we position Zed on this side. Then we would want the Shen on this side, right? And Zed is on this side for the Katarina because it's just sort of better. It's our second best tank. You could actually argue Darken is fine, but this dies too fast. So it's going to die anyway, so yeah. You could argue the Gwen positioning is a little sus here as well. I think, theoretically speaking, you probably want Gwen something like this. Because I don't think she'll wrap towards middle. She'll actually wrap outer. It's a 50-50. You might want Gwen like this. The idea being is that, like, if the Shen is like this, it'll definitely hit. And then if it's like this, then, like, it'll still wrap outwards. You just don't want the Gwen to dash this way and then just get auto-focused by the Aphelios. That would be really bad. I think the idea is that she goes here and then she'll dash, like, this way, and then you're chilling. So, anyways, that's just the Zed reroll stuff. Do I think this is good, though? No. It did win a game in the mid-set finale for a Chinese tournament with like a bunch of high elo players. I tried this once on stream and I hated it. I just did not like it. It just feels like you're very sort of stuck in Zed and nothing else. Like, maybe if there are more lines that pop up because of Veigar Legend, maybe we can play into it, but overall, I just think it's kind of mid. Obviously, don't take Tiny Power. I mean, you can if you want. The Chinese actually took it. I don't remember why, but we weren't shown his perspective, so I don't really know why he took Tiny Power. But if I had to guess, he probably just didn't have any better augments to take. But Tiny Power is just not that strong. And then on top of that, the last one is Ascension for Veigar, and I mean, clearly you don't want Ascension while playing an Assassin comp, so I mean, I feel like I don't have to really explain that. But anyways, try it at your own risk. I think it's okay. If you want to have some fun, play it, but just be careful. If somebody else is running Veigar, you're gonna have a bad time. Finally, let's talk about Bastion Karma. Now, why the fuck am I talking about Bastion Karma? First off, I was looking into the traits. Usually when a new patch hits, this is the first thing that I look at, and I just sort by top 4 rate. There's stuff here that's always going to be at the top. Darken, Technologist, 5 Slayer. This is just because these are very hard to hit traits in general, so like obviously they're going to be at the top. Also stuff like Wander because of Rise, right? And then we start, slowly start getting into the good stuff. Again, 5 Yordle is always at the top. I mean, if you have 2 4-stars on your board, like what the fuck, right? But something that caught my eye was 6 Bastion. I was like, why is 6 Bastion up here? And usually 6 Bastion is usually up here, so I was like, I didn't think too much about it. But I was like, you know what? Why not look into it a little bit? And for those of you who don't remember, 6 Bastions was a bit of a problem at the very tail end of the first patch of the set. Reason being is that you would just spam a bunch of lockets on your front line, and then you would just play an Aphelios back line, and then you'd be hard chilling, and the game would be fucking over. They could not do anything. Basically, your front line was too strong, and that's why Locket got nerfed into the Shadow Realms, and then that's why we don't really have Locket as an item anymore. It's kind of back. Not super back, but it's kind of back. The reason being is that 4 Bastion is still a very solid frontline that you can run. And the idea is that if you find a very early Bastion crest, I don't know if I would say this line is hard forceable, but I would say it's on the teetering line of like, you should probably run this board if you're going to try to play into Bastions. Obviously, this is a level 8 board. This is the end goal, right? But realistically, you're playing a board that looks like this with the Bastion crest on actually set. So if this is actually your level 7 board, kind of like this. You need Archangels on this, by the way. You can't, there's no excuse. If you have an Archangel start with like a 2-1 Bastion crest, consider this line. It's actually not that bad. The idea is that you just play set until you find the Ahri. You just reroll at 7 and you hit 3-star Taric, 3 stars Karma, and your board should theoretically be very strong. There's very, very little data on this line. There's 11 games in Masters Plus, and actually if you go into Diamond Plus, the average goes up and the games are a little higher. So definitely a line I think you can consider. But I think the idea is that you just play around Karma. I don't think Aphelios 2 dishes out enough damage. So if you're trying to play like the old Bastion line, it's just not that good. For those who don't know, it's just Aphelios over Karma here. It was Aphelios 2 with double Guinsoos, and it was just stupid. You don't do that anymore. I think Karma 3 is actually the way out. It seems to be fine just based off the Explorer stats. Again, I had to isolate to 2-star Casting instead of 3. This for very obvious reasons is that because if you're playing the Casting and Hero Augment, then you're going for Casting in 3, and that's just a whole basket of eggs on its own. If you do manage to go 6 Bastion, though, and you hit cast in 3, though, you're going to have a good time because you're going to be playing the cast and hero augment, which is decently strong. You just play into vertical Bastions. It's very great. But nonetheless, I still think this Karma 3 line is just not being explored enough. I think Karma 3 in general is just not being explored enough. I think there are a bunch of niche lines that exist, and I think people just aren't really experimenting with the meta too much. But definitely something you consider, definitely a line that you can play. I have not tested this line out yet, so I can't say for certain if it's actually good or bad. I don't know how heavily you're bleeding on Karma 2 with 6 Bastions. I would assume quite a bit. Because this would be your level 7 board, and assuming that you're hitting this at 4-1, I don't know how good it is. I don't. It's very possible you just bleed out, but maybe you have a bunch of Karmas, or like Infernal Contracts. Like, this is a board that you can probably play this board with Infernal Contracts. I'm not even going to cap. I think the idea being is that even if you hit Infernal Contracts, you can play this. Unfortunately, it would look like this, but I mean, that's probably still fine. Nonetheless, you're also this. So, try it. Like, am I spreading misinformation with this build? I don't know. But, I mean, hey, if you are like, hey, I gained way too much LP today, fuck it. Why not? Just try this out. I think it's totally a cool line to play into. Definitely something you can consider. Obviously, you don't really want to bash and crest this shit. You want to go level 8 eventually and play this. This is your best in. And then, the Ahri items. This is a bop, right? We all know. So, anyways, definitely a line to consider. Definitely something you should try playing. I think it's totally fine. Look into it. Have some fun. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. Oh, sorry. Bing. Anyways, that's it for this video. Take care, guys. I will see you guys next time tomorrow for another video. This is day 1 of daily videos until Vegas. Sounds good. All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Happy climbing.